Hey everyone, welcome to the fifth video in the New Teams Onshape introduction series. Today I'll be talking about Product Data Management, or PDM, within Onshape. The essence of how we'll be applying PDM tools is just using versions, branching, and merging for our documents. For anyone that hasn't done some high-level mechatronics courses or used Git before, this whole concept is probably very unfamiliar. That's totally fine because Onshape's data management learning pathway covers all the basics and is absolutely required watching before using Onshape or watching this video. I'll only be going over some of my tips about how to effectively use PDM. These tools are also super easy to use in Onshape and will really help you create stable models and show off design iterations in your FYP reports. Cool, let's get started. So here we are in the accumulator assembly, which is absolutely somewhere where I've used the PDM suite that Onshape offers quite a lot. So I can view all of my document history with this button up here, which is the versions and history button, unsurprisingly. So you can see we've actually got quite a lot going on here, so I think it's probably time for some diagrams. When you view your document history, you'll be able to see these names up here, which are referred to as workspaces. That's a bit of an Onshape name. A lot of the time they'll be referred to as branches in most other PDM things. Within each workspace, you can view every single change you've made to the entire document. So I've obviously expanded the drop down here and you can see all the changes that I've made there. Once you've made a few changes and you're satisfied that nothing is broken, you can create a version. So all of these kind of colored in dots down here and all of the bold text is one different version. A version is basically the same thing as any one of these changes here, except there are a couple of special properties that you can utilize with versions. The first thing is you can name your versions, which makes it really good for your FYP reports. If you want to go back, you can see I've kind of named some versions here pretty clearly about what was actually going on at that time. So right here, you can see I removed FR4, I changed the steel walls, added 3D printed wall dividers, so on and so forth. So this is really important. You should always use logical names for your versions. By default, I think Onshape will basically just pop it up as V1, V2, V3, which isn't very intuitive for humans to read. The next thing about versions is that if you want to insert something from your document into another document, like for example, if I wanted to insert the accumulator into the main assembly for EV3, I have to have created a version of my assembly, of the accumulator. I have discussed this concept of linked documents in the assemblies video. If you want to create a new workspace or a new branch to try something out, you can only duplicate your workspace if you've made a version first. So this is obviously called branching, the process of duplicating your workspace. Versions are a snapshot in time of your document. So they can't be edited, but you can restore the entire document to the point of the version that you made. This restores the entire document, not just whatever part, studio, or assembly you're working in. If you've realized that you should have created a version at an earlier point in time and you've either made changes since then or created other versions, you can still do that. So all you have to do is right click whatever change you'd like to make a version from and click create version here. Another interesting point is that each version has its own unique URL. So if I go back to this particular version, and this is the one that I want to share either with someone from another team or one of the machinists or another company or something like that, if I go up to share here and do link sharing, it creates a unique link for anyone that's viewing to view this specific version. So guys, make sure you add versions to your documents regularly and be sure to give them descriptive names. It'll be a massive help to you when you need to write your FYP reports, because in there you'll need to demonstrate how you actually iterated on your designs. It's obviously important for your FYP mark, as well as things like the SAE competition love seeing how you iterated on your designs. So branching, as I said earlier, is when you want to create a copy of your workspace to work in. This is really beneficial if you're experimenting with something in your document and other people are still working in that document. That way you kind of have your own sandbox to work in and they can keep working in the original copy of the workspace without being affected by your changes. It's also really nice if you're trying something out and you're not sure if you'll keep those changes. if you decide to abandon it, there's a really clear branch point that you can revert back to when you finish experimenting. So in this diagram here, I was happy with the changes that I made in the purple one, but I wasn't actually happy with the changes that I made in this reduced segment width. So with that one, I was very easily able to kind of go like, all right, I don't want this anymore, go back to the purple branch and continue working. So if you are happy with the changes that you've made to your workspace, you can very easily merge them back into the main workspace. So that's exactly what I've done here with the purple branch, merging it back into main. So it's not very clear from the actual branch diagram itself, but when you go to view changes, you can see the point where you've merged from one's workspace into another. And you can do this from any point or version in the branch, not just the most recent point. So something that I really struggled with when I first started using branches in Onshape was that in order to merge your branch back into the main workspace, you first have to enter main or whatever workspace you're trying to merge into, and then right-click the branch that you'd like to merge from. So I was doing it the other way around. I was trying to bring changes, say, from this branch into main, but I was trying to do that while I was still in that branch, and it just doesn't work like that. A couple of other things about branches is that if you delete a branch, that's permanent and can't be undone, no matter what you do. You can't roll back or Control Z or anything like that. It's permanent. I don't think that there's ever really a reason to delete a branch. If you don't like what you did, you can always just swap over to the other one or roll back or whatever. So I would advise against deleting branches because you can always go back, but not if you delete it. Also, there are no parent-child relationships between branches. A branch will capture your workspace at a certain point in time and it goes from there. So if you change a design in one workspace, it never propagates to any others. And the last tip is you can only create branches from versions. So I can't branch from here, I have to branch from a defined version. So it's important to note that if you ever restore your document to some point or some version earlier on, that event actually appears in your change list. So you can see here, I restored my document to some point about an hour ago. And if I actually decide that that wasn't the right move, I can restore to some point before that as well. So you can kind of put restores on restores if you need to. So you should never feel afraid to mess around with these sort of things, because chances are anything you do, you can either undo it or roll back to a previous version. Onshape is very friendly in that regard. Restoring is also different to just using Control Z or undo, as undoing only affects whatever changes you made in that particular tab, whereas restoring affects everything in the document. If you ever want to compare two different points in time in your document, all you have to do is right-click and hit compare. I'll actually let the Onshape data management learning pathway discuss this and merging when you've got merge conflicts, because it's quite a complicated topic and you really need to have kind of an in-depth understanding to be able to use those. My final tip about the PDM software in Onshape is that when inserting things into your document, you can choose to insert either the most recent copy of that thing, or you can also choose any one of the previous versions that it offers there. Anyway, that's all the tips that I've got about using PDM and Onshape. I hope it wasn't too bad. I'll catch you guys in the next video.